New poll, majority of Americans think being woke is a good thing. In a USA Today Ipsos poll that asked respondents to choose between two definitions of the term, 56% chose to be informed, educated on, and aware of social injustice. That includes not only 3/4 of Democrats, but also more than a third of Republicans. Respondents' age made a difference. Among those aged 50 to 64, 48% chose the overly politically correct definition. However, respondents were divided on whether being called woke was a compliment or an insult. Overall, 40% considered it an insult and 32% a compliment. 60% of Republicans and 42% of independents thought it was an insult. In contrast, 46% of Democrats deemed it a compliment. Younger respondents were more likely than older ones to see it as a compliment. This means though Republicans are casting being woke as a bad thing, a majority of Americans don't see it that way. The term woke dates from the early 20th century when Black American activists urged people to wake up to the reality of injustice. It came back into wide use after the police killing of a Black man, Michael Brown, in Missouri. It has come to mean being aware of not only racism, but also homophobia and transphobia. I mean, I will say, talking about where we're sitting with these stories about what does America think versus what is being, put through in state houses across the country. We know that, gerrymandering has been done so that they can get elected to pass things that are unpopular with the majority of Americans. That's where we stand. The facts, we do 1,000 stories here that polls show people favor reproductive justice. They favor that, LGBTQ Americans should have equality. I really think that this is where representation matters. This past weekend, we did, the Hollywood LGBTQ Council marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in downtown Hollywood. So it was an LGBTQ organization putting ourselves in a space that I will say I had a little hesitation because of what's been happening. I had my 14-year-old son with me, so that also gave me a little bit of angst, but I will say it was overwhelmingly positive. Wow. You could see people in the crowd as we marched that were like, oh my, almost like it was almost a better reaction than being in a pride parade because people were not expecting us to be there. Yeah. It was the reactions where people,
Patrick's Day.
Yes, and kids were there with their parents, and the parents were waving at us, and like we had rainbows everywhere. So I saw a little girl that was like, oh look, there's rainbows, and I was thinking, yeah, isn't this is so threatening to your children. We're making little girls smile because there's rainbows on our float.
Yeah. You know what's great about that story is Hollywood did something that New York didn't.
Yeah.
We're not in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York. Congratulations to Hollywood.
Yeah, we were really embraced, so I was very happy about it.
Does this surprise you at all in terms of?
No, it doesn't, because I think most people inherently understand when we talk about being woke, that we talk about being aware of injustice. And so much of our, whether you're liberal or conservative, whether you're religious or not religious, we all inherently know that what's important is knowing to be compassionate and kind to one another. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the issues of injustice, we're talking about things that are just inherently wrong. We know that it's not kind or compassionate to discriminate against someone because of something that's out of their control, their race, their gender, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their gender identity. I think we all inherently want to be better people. We want to care for each other, especially once we get to know each other. You can't help but care what happens to another person. So no, it's not surprising to me at all that being, quote unquote, woke is actually popular. People understand that I want to be a good person and treat someone.
Do you agree with that?
I think to me what's also happening is that the party that is pushing woke is the same party that tried to storm the Capitol. And a lot of these correlations for the average person that's watching the news or hearing the whatever brings those two things together. Like they are screaming about woke while also not decrying what happened at the Drag Story Hour, not decrying what happened at the Capitol. And for, I would say, a lot of people, whether or not you are American through and through, whatever, the Capitol, the White House, those are things that you don't storm. You know, you kind of just don't behave that way. And so to see that juxtaposed with these people that, you know, are election deniers and all of that, like converging together is making more folks be like, what I don't have a problem with is woke. It's not the woke people that are doing that stuff. It's not the woke people that are terrorizing my kids. It's not the woke people that are, you know, taking books out of our schools or things like that. I think that's becoming a little bit more clear to people. And then I also think that, I mean, we were talking earlier about banks, we're talking about all this stuff, like economic issues are absolutely social issues, but people are also focused on how they're going to eat from day to day, how they're going to stay in their homes from day to day. And the people in power that also want to scream about wokeness are not handling that.
Well, I think you make a good point. Like, the right needs a boogeyman, and that's what woke is. It's a scapegoat. It's the boogeyman.
To win election.
That's right.
And have power and money.
But I think why it's not catching hold is because the connections between being woke and these economic issues, the things that are really hurting people's, you know, the kitchen table issues, is becoming so much more tenuous. How is a drag queen, you know, performing or reading a story have anything to do with, you know,
my light bill
or a bank collapse?
Right. And I think to Jeff's point also is that these folks being elected, they're supposed to be elected to serve. And if you spend any amount of time in Tallahassee, you are seeing the amount of public comment against these things and in favor of healthcare, in favor of curbing the housing crisis, in favor of all those things. And Republicans are literally ignoring it and voting how they want.
And to that point, and that, to me, that's what's worrying about this. If the majority of Americans say they prefer to be educated, which is how they define it, please then demonstrate that by voting in polls and how you voice up support. Because those intersections that you were just talking about, I was thinking about, well, how is this any different than what we went through in pandemic of rejection of science, of rejection and minimalization of the most important medical voice of the last 40 years, Anthony Fauci, and rejection of him in Florida. Even the simple use of demonizing people that embrace the idea of using masks. These are all intersections with each other that are like the narrative that we've allowed them to take control of. Woke is not a negative word because it is a reflection of I am educated and paying attention. But somehow we've allowed these radical, terrorists to take control of this word. And you know, one really good example of that, of how we miss the point that I think we have to voice better, DeSantis has made this point. Florida is where woke comes to die. Now, that's a brilliant branding marketing piece. Might get him elected president of the United States. He's written an entire book to platform what he did in Florida to show how he went out in every possible way to destroy woke thinking, whatever that is. But that's a rejection of science. That was a rejection. That was the embracement of "Don't Fauci my Florida," and all of the anti-education, educated kind of issues. Well, okay, we understand what you said, Governor, but also why are not people screaming bloody murder that in percentage, Florida was the greatest number of COVID-19 deaths of any state in America. It's because woke came to die. And we rejected education. We rejected masks. We rejected closures. We rejected. Okay, woke came to die here. But so did a hell of a lot of people of COVID-19 as a result.
It's the rebranding of the Republican Party from our history as the Know Nothing Party. You know, is that we don't want to know anything about history, about science, and who wants to be associated with that? So they're going to use, you know, the anti-woke and woke comes to die. We need to call them what they are. They're the Know Nothing Party. They don't want to know anything about our history and our culture and science and
Jeff,
things that matter.
Are you sitting down at night writing down the conceptual themes that we'll be talking about? Because
you know,
I'm loving it.
It's just sometimes it's hard to believe that there are a faction of people that want to follow things that literally reject, you know, everything we've learned. Like, you know, in elementary school is to learn about science and learn about other cultures, like, you know, the things
civics and civil behavior.
Just one last thought before Jasmine does the next story. I read an editorial that was very, very interesting on that exact point. Why would you embrace this? Well, people don't forever, and they gave multiple examples in American history and in world history where we didn't. Joseph McCarthy was powerful for a while, and then it all fell apart.
Yeah.
All fell apart.
Yeah. I mean, I hope there's a lot of Democrats that watch this story, because I think that y'all have given them some really incredible messaging tips. And to me, it's like when you talk to the average person outside of your political bubble, like they are very concerned about all of these economic issues, but we're not reaching them with our language. And like you said, we're being baited into these conversations that still never get to the economic issues, even from our side. So when I talk to my dad, he's always like, okay, I understand that y'all are against DeSantis, but what are you for? Like, what are you doing? Like, what is your plan to actually address these beyond platitudes, and also show me how you've done it? You know, how you've worked on that at a local level, state level, whatever. Like, how are you doing that? I think that there's a lot of lack of trust that's happening with Democratic politics. So why would someone wake up in the morning and go vote? If I can't trust that you're actually going to fix the problem, what am I doing? Because all I can do is control me and my household, and I'm going to do the best I can here for me and my family. So
Excellent.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.